I'm very nearly finished all my outlining now. Hello, I've another nice little mini lace project for you that I think you're going to enjoy. It's this is not the completed item, but it's started. It's got the cordon on it. So this is an Irish needlepoint lace, and um, that's what it looks like when you have the design laid down, ready to start the lace. So what I propose to do for this mini project is do a lovely fill on this oak leaf. I'm going to show you how to draw the oak leaf and to show you a new stitch for that filled in area. And the new stitch you're going to love. This is my sampler from the last project. Here is the new stitch. Do you want to see this close up? This is my favorite stitch. This is a Pea stitch. So I'm going to show you how you would draw out that shape first. So let's talk centimeters. This is 4 centimeters across by 6, I think it is, down. And don't despair if you're an inches person. We're going to talk in inches as well. So 6 centimeters is about, what have we got here? 2.5 inches, okay? And this way is about just over 1.5 inches. You get your rectangle down first, basically, and you'll notice this is on tracing paper. That is because I drew it out on a plain sheet of paper first, then I traced it before transferring it onto this, okay? So the way I did that was, came along, did my square, right? Now we'll just assume that my rectangle really, isn't it, that I've measured proportions correctly on this one. I'm not going to bother taking the time doing it again. I came along and rounded corners a little bit. I had a rounded top right hand corner, I had a rounded bottom right hand corner, and I had a rounded top left hand corner, I think. Yeah, you can see my rounded corners there. And I left this one square, just as an interesting design. You can tweak this design any way you want yourself, okay? The oak leaves come in various shapes, but they have certain characteristics about them, don't they? And one of the characteristics is this wonderful curvy thing. And you do a diagonal down from top right to bottom left, or up, whichever you're more comfortable with. Then curve that diagonal very slightly. You've got a basis for your stem. Just do a big curve and have it meet the edge here, and do another big curve, which is hugging a little bit of the edge over here. Because if you remember, if you've done any other projects, and if you haven't, go back, maybe do the Irish Lace Sampler first. That's a fun beginner's project and gives you full instructions for everything. But if you've done other lace projects with me, you'll remember that you try and anchor things to the cordon at particular points so that the work stays together when we take it off this sandwich of backing cotton that it's on, because of course it's lace, it doesn't have this backing on it. It's only when we're working on it has that. So we want to make sure some of those curves are going to touch the edges. So this is why we're making this leaf shape here touch some of the edges. So when you go to make it into a leaf shape, you know where the middle of the leaf is, and you can just make all these little nodes. So it's a series of curves. It's going to be anchored there, there, and there to the cordon, you see. and it's touching down here as well, so it's going to be another nice anchor point there. But that's your leaf shape, basically. I'm going to bring the middle of the leaf just up to here, and that is for sewing reasons, because the stitch I'm showing you, we're going to do it across this way, straight across all the way to here, but it then becomes easier to do the stitch if we split it up into two sides and then come down this side first with the stitch and then this side with the stitch. Okay, but you've got your basic template there that you can do a tracing from now, and your next trick is going to be to trace that out in a pen. So now what I've done is I've gotten some coloured paper in a colour that my white thread is going to show up well against, and I've traced this design onto it with a nice pointy pen, one that's run out so that I don't have lines too thick, and I can reuse this again for another design if I want to make another one at some stage. You'll be able to see your lines through the back when you trace with the pen, but it will be in behind a piece of this contact sheet. Once you've traced in your black indelible pen the design out, you cut out your piece of paper and you stick a piece of contact sheet. The contact sheet is, this shiny stuff, and it peels off this backing. I always keep the backing because the grid is very handy on it. This is going to stay on for the entire piece, just like the last mini project we did. We did a little harvest scene, and we only took that thing off at the very end. So that was it when it was taken off, you see. But that stayed on throughout the making of the entire piece. That way around, I think. So for instructions for making that cordon, I'll put the link underneath the video. It's all there in the Irish Lace Sampler project that we did. The cordon is the first video in that. So look under the video here if you haven't done this before. Okay, and once we have that done, we're ready to do our lovely new stitch, which is our Pea Stitch. Might I suggest that if you have a sampler like this going and have a square available, that maybe you try the new stitch that we're going to do, the Pea Stitch, out on this before you try it on the fill on your oak leaf, because that is a lot of curves to deal with. So you're trying to follow a pattern from line to line and deal with those curves. So it can be a lot easier to practice the thing on your sampler first, as I've done here, and then do it on your shape. So I'm going to show it to you on your sampler where we don't have all the curves and everything. It'll be easier to explain the stitch to you. Row 1, pretty easy because it's a Brussels stitch working left to right. And again, there's a video link below. If you're not sure how to do Brussels stitch, there's our first row there. I'll show you when I get further along in the row. Okay, so I've come down a little bit to start row 2, working from right to left, and we're going to work a Brussels point into the first 2 stitches this time. And I'm doing them kind of a loose Brussels point there, you'll see, but the sampler can be a great thing for working out the correct tension for a stitch, and this is one of those stitches that you don't want to do the stitches too tight because it's kind of an open look to the stitch. Sometimes you do Brussels stitches real tight, but not in this case. We're going to skip 2 and then working to 2 again. So we're skipping these 2 loops here, 1, 2, and going in here. So there's 1, and leave like a biggish loop. Don't try to turn it to do it too tight. And a second one. So we've got 2 stitches there, then skip 2 and 2 stitches again. Okay, and then continue that pattern to the end. So that's the end of row 2 or line 2, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so on row 3, working left to right, we're going to go and do 3 stitches into this big loop that we made on the last row. So we've got 3 kind of loose-ish Brussels stitches, and then we're going to do 1 in that space of 2. So you see this small space here. So it's not the big loop, but it's the space between the 2 stitches that you took close together on the previous row. Okay, you can see the pattern starting to emerge there. And as you see the pattern emerge, it starts getting a bit easier for you. All right, so that's the end of row 3, and I'm starting row 4 with a stitch into this space here. But I'm going to go across to this group of 3 stitches together that I did on the last row, and I'm going to do stitches into the gaps, and there are 2 gaps in the 3 stitches. So I am going to do 2 stitches in those gaps. So we're going across again to the next gap. So we've skipped those 2, you see, and we're just looking for the 3 stitches together and doing 2 into those. And it's starting to look really pretty already. Okay, so we're on the 5th row now, working left to right, and we're doing 1 stitch into those 2 stitches that we did together, and then we're going to go into these spaces as well, the loops that we made, and we're going to do 3 stitches into those. And that is sort of, you know, a repeating pattern, but I'll finish this row and just remind you how the pattern repeats as I go down. So it's 3 into the big space, 1 into the little space, all the way to the end. There it is there. So I'm giving you a nice close-up on the end of row 5 so that if you get lost, you can go back to this point in the video. I'll put chapters underneath. I'll call the next one row 2, because this really is kind of a repeat of just the Brussels point row, you see. It's kind of repeating the spacing of the Brussels point row. So the next row I do would be the equivalent of row 2 up here where we made the loops going right to left. So in row 2, if you remember, we worked into the first 2 stitches, then we skipped 2 to make a bigger loop. Then we worked into the next 2 and then we skipped 2. So it's the same thing here. Okay, so I'm at the end of the row 2 repeat. And on row 3, if you remember, we worked 3 stitches into the big space and 1 stitch into this space here. I've finished that top section working straight across now, and I'm going to start up here and come down that side before doing the other side. Now notice I did the stitches a little bit smaller than this, but it's up to you what size you want to do the stitches. It just meant I get more stitching in if I do this way. So there's the oak leaf, and it's very cute, but how could it not be? It's such a nice stitch. So we're just going to do our fill now in Spanish point. And Spanish point stitch was this one we used for the last project, and you learned how to do it in the last project. So again, I'll put the link underneath. We used it down here, but we did a kind of a curvy version of it. I might do it slightly straighter this time instead of this kind of curvy version. I might do it more like that. But it's up to you which version you want to use. And you can learn how to do it in the link below to the video. So this is a wrapped stitch. So it's over and under the needle before you pull through. And you'll notice that I have a lot of small spaces to fill as well as this big space. I've got a couple of small spaces up here, small space there, and a big space down here to fill. So I'm going to fill them all with that stitch. That's the stitch. It's going to go across in a little line. And don't forget that the return row on this Spanish point is a whip stitch, which kind of sorts out the tension of the row, pulls it down a little bit like that, you see. I'm just finishing off that Spanish point fill now with the whip stitch to attach it at the bottom. And it's going to look really very nice, I think, when I do my sort of finishing stitch that we did on this last project. In fact, we've done it on all our projects, some sort of a finishing stitch that goes around all the shapes. So that'll go around the edge of the oak leaf, and then even the little stem in the middle, and it'll make the design really stand out. And that finishing stitch is just a kind of a buttonhole stitch or a very, very tight Brussels point stitch. Very close together, depending on how you want to look at it. And this is the very last job, going all around the figures before I take it off the backing, clean it up, and then we'll really see how nice it turned out. I'm very nearly finished all my outlining now, and I'm really looking forward to opening up this sandwich and seeing how the lace looks when it comes off that backing cotton. Lace is like a swan, pretty messy underneath and all elegance up on top. But I'll be taking all the stray bits of the couching stitches out with the tweezers from the back before I peel off the front and remove the lace, because it's just easier that way. So I'm just getting rid of couching stitch. So that's most of the couching stitches out, but let's try and peel it off a bit from the front, then we can finish the cleanup. So there we have it. There's our little piece of lace. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this project.